Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the BBallBreakdown live NBA draft show circa 2018. We've had a little bit of difficulties, and I almost feel like it is 1918 because of how hard it was to get everybody in here. FU to Wirecast, big FU. But hey, thank you guys for coming on the show. We have Dave DuFour and Adam Stanco to break down live what's going on. So hey guys, what's happening?
Not a lot. Aiden just went number one, just as basically everyone kind of predicted and knew, through source information. And also, Aiden stands to potentially be a Hall of Fame big man. I mean, the guy's got incredible offensive skill. It can play inside and out. Great passer out of double teams and things like that. Can actually put the ball on the floor a little bit. The only question marks, to my mind, and Adam, I'm curious your opinion on this, is the defensive end. Will he come around on that end?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I agree with you. I mean, I think you look at his offensive skill set, and the guy is so complete. Steps out, hits 12 to 15 footers consistently. He actually showed some three-point range, even though he didn't shoot that well. It wasn't part of his game, really, at the college level, but he has that ability. His footwork's great. Defensively, as you point out, I think it's the big question mark. He's got the physical tools to be there. It was more, to me, off the ball and not guarding guys off switches on the perimeter. He can get low, get in a stance, and actually hang with guards. It was more so the fact that when Biggs, obviously, he was away from the ball, when his guy didn't have the ball, he wasn't getting a lot of those off-ball blocks that some of the great centers of all time, which I think I want to start to compare him to, the Ewings, the Robinsons, the Elijah ones. That's the one thing I think he was missing. So I love DeAndre, and I think he will pick it up. I just think that's awareness, and I think that just comes with time.
Fair enough. I think I agree. I kind of, I have a love affair with Doncic, and I thought it'd be a nice little reunion with him and the coach, Kokoskov of Phoenix now, but who coached him in the national team of Slovenia. But either way, listen, Aiden is the one guy, I suppose, that you can't pass up because of his size and skill, right? I mean, there's other guys who look a little bit like him as far as the size of his body and the things that they could do. We have other guys like Bagley in that realm, but it seems like Aiden is definitely I think it's fair to say he's on a different level.
As an athlete, I mean, the guy is just, he's otherworldly. He really reminds me of David Robinson, the way he's built and how his feet move. I mean, he moves his feet like a guard. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, a guy's 7'1", 250. I mean, to see a guy move, as Dave describes, at that size is just unheard of. And again, you talk about the Shaqs, the Ewings, the Olajuwons, the Robinsons. Those are the great centers, and he's there with them.
Absolutely. Okay, interesting. So David Robinson, you would say, is his ceiling then, right, Adam?
I think he could be beyond that because I think his ability to shoot the ball and his size. I mean, he's ripped like Robinson is, but I think he's even bigger and he's going to get bigger. I think the question for me is how much is this draft class going to change the way we look at bigs in the NBA? And that's what I'm most curious about to find out from you two. It's that all of a sudden we're going to see Bagley enter the league, Jackson enter the league, and Ayton most notably. Our team's going to play, 4 out, 1 in, and throw it down to the post. I mean, are we going to start to see some post play make a return? I mean, things run in cycles sometimes, and we've been getting away from that. I'm just curious as to what you guys think in terms of the future of the NBA as it relates to some of these rookies coming in.
Sure. Well, we could talk about that for a second. And as for the Kings are about to select, and they choose Marvin Bagley of Duke, which I think was, again, not a surprise at all. But just to answer that question, I think what we're going to see, I did see like Wendell Carter, I posted this on Twitter a few minutes ago, was a center who catches the ball out top, shot fake, puts the ball on the ground, kicks it, and then floats to the low post where they feed him, and then he does a move and scores. So kind of like we see Steph Curry driving, kicking, and then getting to the corner for a three really quickly, we're going to see, I would imagine, big guys do that, but then instead of going to the corner, they're going to go down low and grab low post position and score.
Woj just tweeted out a trade. Atlanta and Dallas are going to make a trade. It's going to be 3 and 5. They're going to swap, and so I guess Luka's going to go to Dallas.
Oh wow!
Trey Young's going to Atlanta. Dallas is also sending Atlanta a future first. So Luka Doncic, if he's on the board, I guess. He'll be on the board. So Luka Doncic will be traded to the Dallas Mavericks for Trey Young. That just happened.
Wow.
And this was interesting because we knew that the Mavs had a love affair with Doncic. It became very public a few days ago, and then yesterday, all of a sudden, Atlanta started putting out, the smoke signals. Oh, we love Doncic too, knowing that he might be available because they thought the Kings wouldn't take him and drive up the price. So it's really interesting to look at how Doncic now is going to fit alongside Dennis Smith. I think is really interesting. It's a breakdown tape waiting to happen, I think, Coach. And then
yeah, my mind is already reeling here.
And then we got a whole nother discussion in terms of Atlanta, who spent all that time tanking this year and then moves down a couple spots. I have to believe they have strong interest in Jackson and Bamba. Dave, you were thinking that maybe even Trey Young for Atlanta. They just didn't want to take him at 3.
Right. So they're going to get Trey in this trade. And so my idea was that I think they really like Trey, but just not at 3. So they pick up a future first from Dallas, and there's still a thought that they may try to trade up from 19 to get back into the lottery and get another guy. So look for them to try to make a deal with the Clippers to maybe get 12 or 13 and potentially try to move Bazemore or Dennis Schroeder. I think that they would like to get one of these young wings. This is a team now that'll have Trey Young, Taurean Prince, John Collins. That's a good young group to start with. And as far as the Mavericks go, I think Doncic is going to work well with Dennis Smith. He'll be able to actually take some spot-up shots, which he didn't get a lot of playing in Europe. And it'll be a secondary playmaker from the wing. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch that team. I do think that in free agency, one of the priorities they should have is a rim-running big. So that way you've got a guy who can actually run the pick and roll with these two and not rely so much on the Dirk Nowitzki pick and pop.
Interesting.
But this almost assuredly locks in Jaren Jackson to Memphis at 4. And, he's a guy that a lot of my draft go-to guys have said he's going to walk in the league as a top 20 defender and potentially be one of the best defenders in the league by year 4. So, Memphis could use that guy if he shows any of the offensive flash that we've seen. If he can actually refine that stuff, he could play as the 4 next to Gasol, and also he could be their small ball 5. I like it for them.
I'm not so sure I like Jaren Jackson that much right now. I watched some tape of him this morning and was sort of like, just kind of a big shrug to me. But part of the shrug was just what they were doing in Michigan State, how they were running their offense. This is sort of one of those things where maybe I get him in a pro set and get him spacing and different things, and he'll be able to do more. But he certainly seems pretty raw, I would say, at the very least.
Yeah, I watched Jaren Jackson work out, actually, and people are in love with him for his potential. Dave talked about it a bit. I mean, he's 18 years old. So Ayton and Bagley, who obviously just got picked, both 19 years old. Jaren Jackson, he's 18, even though Bagley reclassified to become a freshman. Great instincts in terms of his shot blocking, extremely productive in terms of the per 40. But overall, he didn't show a lot of offense, in his freshman year. He did shoot well from the three-point line. There's no question about that. But I almost look at that as almost a small sample size because I do not like the way that he particularly shoots the ball right now. But in terms of his ability to handle the ball, his fluidity, his strength, his future is awful bright. And he's fallen in love with working out. That's been the crazy thing that I've seen over the last few weeks, that all the guys that work him out say he loves it now and can't wait to get back to it the moment the draft ends. So looks like we have another pick on the board here of Luka Doncic, right straight into Dallas, but being picked by the Atlanta Hawks. So
can I bring up a pet peeve I have?
Sure.
Listen, the trade is
yes.
done.
Yes.
Right.
I hate that they have him in the stupid Hawks hat. It's just so ridiculous. Let's just give him the Mavericks hat. I mean, I guess they still have to make the pick of Trey Young to make, because if Memphis decides to take Trey Young, then I guess the deal would be off. But, it's just, I don't know, it's annoying.
Right, but I don't. Obviously, Memphis doesn't take Trey Young. I would think that there's still somebody over there that eventually will get healthy. That'll play that position. I think, right?
Yeah, Conley will still be their point guard. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, by the way, when do they give up on Conley? At what point this year? If he keeps getting injured?
Well, they signed him to a huge contract, so
yeah,
I don't know where they're going to send him.
Fair enough. But how long? How many more years is that contract? 2?
No, he signed a 5-year max. So,
but that wasn't before. How many years ago was that?
I think it was 1. Let me I'll pull it up.
Yeah, it was last year.
It was last year. It seems like it was
the
at
year
least
everyone was getting the monster deals.
Okay, it seems like it was at least 2 years.
One. Yeah,
but okay.
The thing we didn't discuss is Marvin Bagley now with the Kings, and I'm curious as to how you guys think about the fit. I mean, what I saw and what I really like about Bagley is you don't see guys at that size move the way that he does. And in a way, it's Rasheed Wallace-like or Kevin Garnett. And I'm not comparing the skill sets. He did average 21 and 11 last year too. But more so just the idea that he moves with such fluidity at that size. And it's just awful appealing. There aren't humans like Marvin Bagley. And so I'm curious as to what you guys think of the fit. You know, does this mean Willie Cauley-Stein's out the door? What's the future look like for Kings?
The last guy at that size that ran as smoothly as him is probably Willie Cauley-Stein. So you kind of got a guy who isn't – but obviously Willie Cauley-Stein never had the kind of offensive polish that Bagley does, even though I still think that Bagley has a long way to go in that department. But he's farther ahead at this point of his career than Willie Cauley-Stein was. You have to just worry about the fit. You have to worry about the culture. Just being at the Kings seems to be a kiss of death for a lot of people. And I don't know by bringing in a new coach if that changed much or if anything at all last year, but certainly that is the biggest fear, is that they're not going to develop and they're going to get stuck in this terrible situation.
Well, I don't think that the Kings think highly of Willie Cauley-Stein. You know, he's got some huge effort issues, and that's a problem if you're big in the NBA. And with Bagley, there's none of those concerns. I mean, the guy plays hard the entire time. So the coaching staff is not going to have to say, hey, come on, give us a little extra. I do think he could walk into this year and probably be a 2010 guy on a bad team. I don't know if his game is ever going to translate to winning basketball. That's tough to say about a kid that's 19 years old, but I don't know that he's going to be able to expand his game enough to actually be on a winning team. So we'll see. I mean, I do think he's going to put up numbers, and he is a high-effort player. The defense is atrocious from what I've seen. So, I'm interested to see what happens. I still think Harry Giles is the most interesting big that Sacramento has.
Yeah, well, if one day we get to see him, I'll be able to agree or disagree with you on that one. I have a little bit of a question on the motor on Bagley, I believe it or not. Just watching him in transition. It's funny. First time I watched it, I was like, this guy doesn't seem like he knows exactly how to run very hard. But it was weird because I grabbed those clips and I brought him in. As I was editing and writing the voiceover, I don't know. Maybe my mind flipped or something. He did look like he was running like it wasn't as much of an issue all of a sudden. The same clips, 8 hours later. So I don't know what's going on in my brain with that. But I did feel like I had a little bit of a question, and maybe even Adam. I feel like maybe you saw what I was talking about. If that is even a slight question.
Yeah, I think that's been brought up somewhat. I think there's a question about it. It's a weird thing because you expect out of Duke players that no matter what they're going to play hard, especially on the defensive end.
Whoa. Well, okay, but did Okafor do anything to facilitate that?
No, totally fair. I'm more saying the perception as to what people expect. I agree with you. I have more of a question, though, with his ability to – he basically gives up defensively. Like when he ends up on switches, in the Boston College game that Duke was playing this year, when their guards were attacking, they knew they could stop and pull up 10 feet, 8 feet, and get wide open looks. That should never happen against a guy that's 6'11" and moves the way he does. There's no way a guard should be able to consistently pull up in the mid-range, and I think that's where I have a bigger issue because that's almost an effort thing, even if it's in the half court. And my running the court effort issue guy is actually Moe Bamba, who's going to be selected pretty soon. Moe Bamba, to me, is more of a guy that doesn't get up and down the court as much as I think that he should. Couple things I really like on Bagley, though, is that I really love his hands, and he's a quick leaper and a really good rebounder. I think that ultimately in the right spot, right coaching, this guy I still think could turn into a really special player, and we're still forgetting. He reclassified. He should have been a high school senior this year. He's still young, maturity-wise, as well as his development.
Sure. An interesting comment in the Twitter on Periscope. Robbie Rob 30 says, I feel like the most efficient version of Bagley would be a 6'10 Iggy. But I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I don't see it.
Dave?
I don't see it.
Oh, that is Dave. Sorry, Adam?
Oh, no. I'm the same way. I don't see it either. Plus, keep in mind, one of the things that makes Iggy so special is his ability to pass the basketball. We didn't really see that from Marvin Bagley this year.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately Bagley's going to be a better shooter than Iggy is anyway, no matter what.
I think so. Lefty was pretty good form. I think his shooting could really actually be pretty special.
Right. And somebody thinks that Coach, me and Dave look like 80s porn stars. He says Pinot stars. I'm assuming he means porn stars.
Wait a minute, am I a 90s porn star?
Well, your beard is a little bit behind. You're a 90s porn star. We're the 80s because the beards are much for thicker and further along. We have another pick. Oh, we are. I guess we covered it. Well, Jaren Jackson was picked out of Michigan State by the Grizzlies. Surprise? Anybody? Adam?
No, not surprised at all. Like I said, I saw the kid, love the kid. His dad is in his corner. You might remember his dad playing at Georgetown. Jaren Jackson, completely different player. I mean, the size is there. And again, 18 years old. He has what most people consider to be the most upside possibly in the draft just because we haven't even seen it yet. With Ayton and Bagley, we already saw what they're capable of. Jackson, 10.9 points a game, 5.8 rebounds. And again, shot just under 40% from the three-point line. But it's his shot blocking instincts that can come in. He's already an NBA shot blocker tomorrow if you put him on a team. And the offense is what we're going to wait on. But I'm telling you, the explosiveness that I saw, it's very raw. And it brings up a bigger point. And I know that, Dave, you talked about this at length in the past. And that's, we think of the Tom Izzos and Coach K's and John Calipari's as these guys that mold these players into these great, and Coach, obviously you as well, these great players for the NBA level. But really, they're focused on getting these guys to play team defense, to work within their system. The lack of skill development at the college level is really a problem. And that's why I think these NBA guys think so highly of someone like Jaren Jackson, because they think, I can mold him to be exactly like I want him to be.
I don't think that those things are mutually exclusive, though. I don't think that you have to sacrifice individual development for like this notion of your team being better on the college level. One of the problems I had watching Jaren Jackson footage this morning was what comes up first is them playing against Syracuse in the NCAA tournament, and I couldn't believe the offense they were trying to run against a 2-3 zone. It looked like it's 8th grade, 9th grade basketball. Very frustrating that Izzo, he's been there for 50 years. He runs the same stuff. He works, so he has no reason to really change it. But certainly, I just kind of find that weird that they're still doing the same old stuff there. And even though the bottom line is they're winning there, it just seems like they do their players a lot better service if they would just upgrade and do more modern action. It would make everybody around better, and they certainly wouldn't lose any less games. That's the thing. So that's what I have about Jaren Jackson. So we don't even I couldn't even really tell what he can do, what he couldn't do offensively. End of rant. So
yeah, and I think judging a lot of these guys in college is really tough. And this is why I'm not sold that Ayton isn't going to be a good defender in the league as a rookie, because I just don't trust Sean Miller as a defensive coach. Ayton played much of the season out of position, and the scheme was a little all over the place. So I don't think that we can. This is where I look for skill, right? Like I look for, okay, that guy did this thing I know translates to the NBA. Trey Young, for instance, like we know he can shoot. We know he can play make for others. Like he's got great court vision. Jaren Jackson is a freak athletically, can put the ball on the floor a little bit, attack closeouts, can shoot from range. So I look at that kind of stuff instead of, okay, how did he necessarily perform? I think that's the right way to do it.
Right. And Dave, you said that Woj was not going to be tweeting during the draft, but there it is. He must be, head down and tweeting, thumbing while on the screen. He just threw this out 2 minutes ago as part of the Atlanta-Dallas agreement. Dallas will make the 5th pick for Atlanta Hawks, Trey Young, and send him to the Hawks, sources said. So they are now locked in there. We now know that Doncic is going to go there. And I'm interested. I'm intrigued. Again, the way we described that with John Collins and Taurean Prince, I don't think that's not a team that's competing for anything. I don't even know if they're competing for a playoff spot for at least a year, maybe more.
Yeah, the Hawks have a long way to go, I think. But that being said, Trey Young is a guy that you have to put the ball in his hands. Any team that was going to draft him was going to say, hey, you are going to change the culture and sort of the look of what we do here as an organization, for better or worse. I love Trey Young personally. People were worried about his height. He came in, measured the exact same height as Collin Sexton, which I think surprised a lot of people at the Combine. He's taller than Aaron Holiday is. And, Dave alluded to it. His ability, his court vision. We all know about the shooting and the range and the scoring. Nobody has ever led the country in scoring and assists. So the fact that he did that was just completely remarkable, especially to do it against top-tier competition, playing from a power conference. But it's his vision that really stood out to me. He makes skip passes and lefty passes that are remarkable, and that's the part of his game that I really love, and his quickness. I think that's been really undersold. He can get anywhere he wants on the floor. He's been facing double teams, junk defenses all year, and still managed to get through it. There's nothing the NBA is going to throw at him that he hasn't already seen. Now, may there be some issues defensively? Sure. But I love the fact that Atlanta now is going to sort of change what they are. I think that now Atlanta becomes the Trey Young show. And seeing him and John Collins and Taurean Prince, I think is going to be a blast to watch for the next few years.
Absolutely.
So Trey Young was just selected by Dallas, so that completes that trade. And Moe Bamba will be taken by the Orlando Magic.
Okay. So now, for me just to weigh in really quickly on Trey Young, I'm all in. Did a video on him earlier this year. I do think, oh no, he's wearing knickers, fellas.
I'm aware.
Yeah, I just saw that image. I didn't need to see it, but anyway.
He might have needed to distract from the hair because he knows everyone's always going to comment on his bad hair. So.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that could be shorn, but certainly the pants forever in my mind. But yeah, without question, Trey Young I think is the second coming of Steph Curry. He certainly seems to have all those skills and more, and maybe even at an earlier age. So perhaps when he gets to be 25, 26, he'll be able to tap into even more of that Curryness. And the league, by the way, I mean, let's see, Trey Young is what, 19, right?
Yep, he's 19.
So like at age 20, we're talking about 6 years from now, the league will be shooting 50 threes a game, probably. It'll be much more wide open than it is even now, I'd imagine. So you're going to, there's be a lot of room for him to really grow and fill that stat sheet up without question. Dallas, what do we think? Are they going to compete at all? Probably not. This might be Dirk's.
Actually,
yeah.
You know what? I think that they're going to be very active in free agency. I mean, now with that being said, it's always hard to compete with a young point guard like they have with Dennis Smith Jr. and Luka Doncic. Most NBA rookies are not very good. We got lucky this season by having a bunch that were contributors to playoff teams. But, I think that they're going to do what they can to compete. They still have some veterans on that team that can contribute to winning basketball. The big question for them is, can they get the big that they need to pair with these two guards? I mean, I think it's going to be tricky.
And I'll tell you something. I think what's really interesting, too, I think this is the point in the draft where we're sort of reaching. I mean, I think there's going to be other guys down the line that have major star potential. But in terms of the guys that have already been selected, I think these are all guys that are going to be the faces of their franchise. I mean, DeAndre Ayton, Bagley, Trey Young now we know, Luka Doncic for sure, the Mavs, and Jackson. Now, maybe not next year or the year after, but 3 years from now, maybe we're talking about Jackson also being the face of the franchise. What's interesting, I think, about the Luka Doncic thing is that you can now attract free agents because guys are going to want to play with what they're building. And again, it may be not this year, but when guys start to see how much fun it is, and I think that's the thing about Dallas and also Atlanta, they're going to be fun again. Like how cool is it going to be to see Dennis Smith and Luka Doncic sharing a backcourt together? I mean, sharing off who's on the ball, who's off the ball, the fast breaks these guys are going to run. It's going to be incredible. I think that tandem is really cool to start thinking about all the options they're going to have there now.
Yes, but my other fear is of seeing Dennis Smith and Doncic like looking back at the bench at Carlisle every other possession to see what call he wants him to run. That fear, it scares me a little bit. So maybe hopefully he'll loosen the reins a little bit too to give them some more free form range to play. Wow, I silenced the crowd. All right, so we're coming up at the end, so we are now moving on to the next pick after Trey Young, which already was announced, Moe Bamba. Is that correct, Dave?
Yeah, it's going to be Moe Bamba for everyone.
Now, I got a chance to see Moe Bamba work out and with Drew Hanlon. And certainly, he definitely is really intriguing. I know he caught my eye as well with his highlights in college because they were very spectacular, a lot of them. So, he easily could be as intriguing as the other guys, as certainly as Bagley, because he's really long. I mean, this guy, when you talk to him, he is legitimately, tall and long. I mean, this is not, they're not faking the numbers here.
No, he's freakish. He's a freakish athlete. I mean, 7'10" wingspan, broke the record at the NBA Combine, which is unheard of. I mean, he's 6'11" and a quarter without shoes. That's otherworldly. And like you said, it just looks like he's totally stretched out. It's incredible to see Moe Bamba. Again, I'm a little bit worried about his desire on the basketball court. He wasn't that productive on the offensive end. Really struggled a bit scoring through traffic. As Dave said earlier, you have to look at what skills are translatable and sort of go from there, because there's other parts of the game that they can work on. And Moe Bamba, by all accounts, a wonderful kid. He's from New York City, went to school Westtown in Pennsylvania, which is building a powerhouse high school program. Moe Bamba has a ton of upside, a ton of talent. You can see where it's going. If his floor is Rudy Gobert, you're in pretty great shape. Now the question is, will he develop an offensive game? We started to see him work out, shoot some threes. I don't know that he'll ever be a three-point shooter, but Moe Bamba certainly has to be more productive. A question mark, but if you're going to take a question mark, a guy with a 7'10" wingspan isn't a bad place to start. Dave, what do you think of the kid?
Well, I love him as just a human being. I got to talk to him last year at Hoop Summit. Super interesting kid, just really well put together. And, for me, I respect the fact that basketball he's got more going on in his life than basketball. He's got other interests. Jaylen Brown has the same thing, and no one thinks that he doesn't have a desire to play. I respect that as a human being. But I love him on the court. I think he can really use his length. If the shooting is coming together, and if he can he needs to add some strength, because he gets bullied inside by guys that are bigger than him. And if he can correct those things, he really could be a game changer defensively, and a guy who could almost affect the game as if you gave Rudy Gobert a three-point shot. And now that's a huge reach, but this is if these things come together. Now the question is, do you trust Orlando to kind of bring this together? And I don't know.
Right. I will say that Bamba definitely has much better hands than Rudy ever had. So that's a really big step up for him. I think he'll struggle offensively for sure. I think he's more in that Clint Capella offensive path, which at this point I'm sure Orlando would take if he gets to be, after a couple of years, what Capella can do. And then also the destruction that Rudy Gobert gives them on defense, for instance. I think that would be a nice little piece to their puzzle. Certainly, this is a good pick for them, and a way out of their situation that they're in now.
And how about the idea that athletically, you're going to throw Aaron Gordon with that length athletically and Moe Bamba together?
Maybe.
Right.
Remember, Aaron Gordon is a restricted free agent this summer. I don't know if Orlando is as sold on him as we are. I think they envision Jonathan Isaac and Moe Bamba as their front court of the future.
Equally as long and athletic, you may argue.
Right.
But still, So you think this may actually be almost, I don't want to call it a replacement pick, but sort of fills that void in a way.
Right. Where does Aaron Gordon potentially go?
Well, I think you're going to have a lot of teams that are interested. The question is, how much is Orlando willing to spend to keep him? If he gets a 4-year, $80 million offer this summer, is Orlando going to match that? I'm not convinced.
Right. The elephant in the room right now is Michael Porter Jr., who had been hovering all over the board, everywhere from, top, 3 to in the teens. What does this say? This looks like he's not going to get picked anytime in the next several draft picks. Would you say?
Well, those medicals that went out last Friday apparently scared a lot of teams off.
Don't blame
to the
him.
Point where, what?
Don't blame him at all.
Yeah, to the point where his agent, Mark Bartelstein, actually sent out a bunch of emails today to teams with more medicals saying, hey, this is, you guys are kind of taking this out of proportion. Both the Clippers and the Nuggets are preparing, I think, to take him if he's available. So okay. I don't see him dropping out of the lottery, but it's crazy. I saw this guy at Hoop Summit last year. I thought he would wind up being no worse than 3 in this class, and of course, the injuries are unpredictable. When he's healthy, he's a guy who can fill it up. He can really shoot the ball coming off the screens and all the things you need to do to survive as a wing in the NBA. He's 6'10". He can attack a closeout. I think his handle's a little loose, but he's a plus athlete, and so NBA teams usually figure those guys out. But if he's not going to be healthy, I mean, I don't blame these teams for not taking the risk.
Sure. We have a Woj bomb, a semi-Woj bomb. Chicago is zeroing in on Wendell Carter with the 7th overall pick, which, by the way, out of Duke, who was a teammate of Marvin Bagley. I got to tell you guys, I was watching some footage of him. I think I'm more impressed with his offensive game than I am with Bagley. Yeah, Bagley gets picked ahead of him.
I think Wendell Carter fits perfectly in the modern NBA. I do think he's going to wind up being able to shoot the three. I think his interior defense is going to be good, and his ability to facilitate from the elbows. He's a really gifted passer, and I think that matters so much. And then, he and Markkanen should be able to play well off of each other. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think here's my thing with Wendell Carter, and this is the downside. And again, we're talking about another 19-year-old kid, so you're again trying to project out. But when you look at the negatives for him right now, he had some poor footwork, his decision-making sometimes when he was rushed, getting the ball in the post, and when he had to switch out on guards on the perimeter, he was getting beaten some. But those things being said, that's all correctable. So you look already, we see the form on his shot, which you don't want to get in and have a guy have to totally restructure how they shoot the basketball. I love how Wendell Carter shoots the ball. So he's got good form on his shot. Obviously, his size is great. And then the fact that he rebounds at a really high rate, I have to agree, the idea that he's exactly the type of guy, maybe he doesn't have that same superstar potential, but against a Larry Markkanen, I mean, this guy could be an ideal fit for the Bulls. So guys seemingly are starting to fall into places where even though, as Dave has written about, you don't want to draft for fit, I think these guys do fit.
Yes. I think it's a balancing act, right, Dave? You have to sort of understand that if you have Magic Johnson, you're not going to draft Isaiah Thomas in the next year. Although ask Mark Jackson what happened in that when they drafted Rod Strickland right after he won the Rookie of the Year. So we've seen teams sort of do that, but I think that you have to right. There is the notion that it's whatever percentage of is got to be best player available, but also, is it you already have something that's already there? Portland didn't pick Michael Jordan because they already had Clyde Drexler. Although I suppose they probably rue that pick too, and then Sam Bowie.
If you're a bad team, best player available. If you're a good team, best player available. And best player available just makes so much more sense. I mean, there were a lot of people who thought the Suns should take Doncic because of the Igor Kokoschkov connection.
Yeah.
But, how long do coaches normally last with a team? 3-4 years? Doncic is a guy that you're going to have under team control for 7 to 9 years. So, you've got to – a lot of this stuff I think people overthink. The key to the entire process, and when you look at what the best teams do, they take the best talent available at their spot. And if it fits on the court, that's great. But organizational fit is even more important than on the court. If you draft a bad character guy to a team that doesn't have a strong locker room, okay, well, guess what? He's most likely going to fail. I mean, we kind of saw the ups and downs that they had in Sacramento with DeMarcus Cousins. Not that I question his character, but I think his on-court stuff is, it wouldn't have happened if he was in an organization that could kind of give him some guidance. And I think that, this is the thing, again, why I don't hate the Bagley pick for Sacramento. I mean, it's not great. They should have taken Doncic. They're overthinking it a little bit, but they're not going to have any character problems. And I know that's been something they focused on. They took De'Aaron Fox last year. They brought in, Zach Randolph. They brought in Vince Carter. But the biggest thing is if you think Marvin Bagley is the most talented guy at the number 2 pick, that's the guy you take. End of story. They're really who cares if you got 800 centers on the roster? You take the most talented guy.
Okay, fair enough. And it's now official Wendell Carter is in Chicago. So they'll be, playing off of that, which I again, there's an interesting fit there with Markkanen. There's a lot of these. It's interesting as we move forward, and it seems like these drafts are. Here's the other question I have for you guys. Then, are these drafts getting any deeper to you as the years go by? Does it feel like they're deeper or not?
Well, my answer to that is I think every draft is sort of unique in its own right. I mean, last year, and I think they all sort of had their own identity. Last year, we saw some players that I thought were really stand out, some perimeter players. There was a lot of talent that you could get in last year's draft. I thought it was a little bit deeper. I didn't love the guys up at the front, but as it went deeper, you could get your Larry Markkanens as you went on, Donovan Mitchell.
Right.
And this year, I've looked at as the draft of about 7. That's who I felt. And although I felt Porter was the guy and not in Wendell Carter. That being said, I still think as you move along, I think there's just more. Bobby Knight said it a few years ago. It's not that the great players haven't always been great. Any great player in any era could play at any era. It's just that there's more great players now. And I think there's more great players across college basketball. And to me, that's it. That's the whole key right now, is that you can have some really talented guys. It's funny, though, because you still don't see a lot of second-rounders who pan out. I think scouting's gotten pretty good. But I still believe that as you go deeper into this draft, there's some guys that could show some real serious potential.
Now, Chauncey, his comp for Wendell Carter is Carlos Boozer. Adam, what do you think about that?
I don't know. I think almost as different players. I like the idea that they sort of have similar looking shots. The form on their shot is similar, but I almost think different guys. Boozer was almost a bruiser, and would be physical with you and also step out and shoot it. Dave's talked about the passing of Wendell Carter that I think is different. I think he moves a little bit better. I kind of like Wendell Carter's game. And again, it's a compliment to him because Carlos Boozer had some very good years, early on in his career. But I just sort of see them as different players. I see Carter more stretched out version, if you will, and a guy that moves a little bit better. Yeah,
I'm not so sure I see the shot mechanic similarity, but either way, I think it looks like Carter's got a better, much smoother release, not such a hitch behind his head. Dave, what do you think?
Just got a shams bomb, or what do we call that? Cleveland's going to take my guy Collin Sexton with the 8th pick. This is kind of interesting to me.
Okay.
So I'm big on Collin Sexton. I mean, I think he's a hell of a competitor. I think from an intangible standpoint, he's just fantastic. I mean, if anybody's watched the tape from when he played that game 3-on-5, I mean, I know the NBA guys love that. He's a really impressive, just another one that's really impressive as a person. 4.0 student, including this year at Alabama. I worry, though, about how much success he's going to have at the next level.
Yeah, Collin Sexton, first of all, his height, people thought that he was a bigger guard than he was. Like I said, came into the combine. He's a guy that was always listed much bigger than he ended up measuring out at 6'1.5". He's certainly explosive. He's certainly athletic, and there's a lot to love about. He just sort of has a swagger about him with the way that he plays, and I see all the things Dave's talking about. And he scored at a high level, and he was the leader of that Alabama team. The issue for me was he has not shot the ball well. He didn't work out very well. In fact, even his Cavs workout, that they sort of sold it as him being underwhelming, which is why even more surprising to me that they'll end up drafting him. But in terms of a guy that's undersized lead guard, who's athletic, if he can't shoot the basketball and hasn't necessarily shown the ability to even shoot it better in the workouts leading up to the draft, defensively, he hasn't been the guy that he necessarily should be, and he doesn't distribute at a very high level right now. Now, granted, part of that was a little bit of a chaotic system with a bunch of athletes at Alabama, but I have a bunch of questions about Collin Sexton, where early in the year I loved him, and I love his competitiveness, I love his drive, I love his athleticism, but I have question marks about him at the next level. So, and also people should keep in mind, it's no matter who the Cavs draft is not going to influence. It didn't matter who they took, even if they were able to get DeAndre Ayton, it was not going to influence whether LeBron James was staying in Cleveland. So I just want to let the record show that that's a fact.
Fair enough. So interesting though. Now, how much of this is not a huge surprise to anybody? That Collin Sexton is going to Cleveland? All right. I'm sorry, Dave. Yeah, we can't hear you.
The one thing I would say about Collin Sexton, too, is in terms of it being a surprise, is I think we all started to believe that the Cavs were going to go for a point guard. That's what it looked like. Trey Young, possibly. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. There was a thought. It looked like the Cavs had, over the last week or so, it looked like the Cavs had serious interest in taking a point guard for next year. And so once you knew Doncic, Young were off the board, it's going to look like Sexton or maybe Gilgeous-Alexander. I thought Gilgeous-Alexander could move into that spot, but So again, I'm a little bit surprised because I just thought that when the Cavs worked them out that they were underwhelmed, but maybe that's them just keeping stuff, to the vest.
Yeah. Dave, what, are you back? Wow. No, it's and then you just disappeared on us. Okay. Well, we're having some technical difficulties, as always, with doing a live stream for an extended period of time. Sometimes these things don't work out all perfectly. But we will be sending a nasty email to Wirecast for sure. Let's see here. Now we lost Dave. Looks like he's gone. Now he's just a big question mark. And there he's back.
Am I in? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a little bit better maybe now.
Yeah,
so
let's just say Wirecast is not my favorite.
Yeah, right. But that mic has caused us problems too. So anyhow, all right. Well, let's see here. Do we have any other bombs while we're speaking of bombs from any of the other from Woj or Shams?
Kevin Knox is going to go to the Knicks at 9.
Okay, Kevin Knox, the Knicks at 9. I liked what I saw of him at Kentucky. Yeah.
I think he'll probably wind up being a decent scorer at the next level.
Yeah, and Dave, unfortunately, that's we could barely hear what you're saying, and I'm sure everyone's enraged over. Adam, give us your thoughts on Kevin Knox breakdown. What's your breakdown?
Well, he's got the length for sure. We know that about Kevin Knox. He scored at a nice clip. He was over 15 a game for Kentucky this past year. He's a kid that measured at the combine 6'7" and 3/4 inches. He certainly has the length. Fits sort of the prototypical look of a wing at the NBA level right now. And the fact that he could shoot the basketball is huge. So I think you talk about a longer wing who could shoot the ball and seems to be, the Knicks almost going in the position of what seems like almost a safe pick for them, not swinging for the fences in Michael Porter. And to me, that's the bigger story. When you have Knox on the board and you have Porter on the board and you go with Knox, that just tells you that still the medicals scare teams. And the one thing that we hadn't mentioned about Porter earlier is the idea that doctors say that even if he does return to be 100%, which he certainly didn't this college basketball season, even if you believe he could get there, it's probably not going to be for another 2 years. So that means a serious period of patience. And when you're the Knicks and you have a guy like Kristaps, you want to get good as quickly as possible. So I think that Kevin Knox is a safe selection for right now. I think everybody really likes him. He didn't shoot the three as well in college as we would have expected, only 34%. But I think everyone sees the form and the release and they think, all right, this kid's going to be a shooter at the next level.
Yeah, he looks to me like he can be the guy who isn't that Kevin Durant mold. I know he's not 7 feet, but he's long. He's got some of that height, which is weird to me. That I'm surprised that more guys in that height range of 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", who can handle the ball and who could shoot aren't even higher in the draft. It's weird that everybody wants to sort of still pick the traditional big man that can maybe shoot a little bit. We really, and by the way, I'm not really sold on any of those guys already picked on their outside shots. Certainly nothing in volume that we could see in the college ranks. But to me, if I would think I would value a lot more highly the guys that are 6'8", 6'9", that could shoot and handle the ball.
Yeah, this is the first of that shooting class that you start to think about now, because I think the shooters that are still on the board, I mean, we had Kevin Knox, who got a guy like Mikal Bridges, 3-and-D guy, Kevin Herter out of Maryland, who's one of my favorite players in this draft, shoots the heck out of it from range. Dante DiVincenzo. So some of those wings that can really shoot, Grayson Allen, those guys are still available on the board. And I'm with you. You would think that in today's NBA, there'd be such value on that. You watch the Cavs in the finals and think they need a shooter, and it's almost like, well, there are a bunch of them out there. It's just having those guys on the rosters. People do fall in love with bigs and athleticism. Kevin Knox, the first real shooter. The other big thing about Kevin Knox is that he can finish. I mean, not in a he'll dunk on you kind of way, in that explosive way, but he's got great touch around the hoop as he's attacking, and he knows how to use his length to, with the English around the backboard and stuff, which, again, is another part of the craft, I think, that's underappreciated.
Yeah. Dave, you want to give it a shot?
Well, can you hear me?
No. I mean, I can hear you if you were on Mars. All right. I don't know. I guess Dave we're going to have to give up on Dave because it's really, we can't really hear him. Unless you want to, restart your computer and try again, whatever, I guess, let me clean up this little, the desktop here so we don't see him. Let's do that. And let's do this. And at least I'll go like there. Okay, well, it's you and me, Adam, for a little bit here. We're on opposite sides of the screen here with a big gap. But hey, Dave, it was nice to have you here. Maybe, we'll figure that out at some point sooner than later. But, all right, what are we at here now? We have...
Well, 10th pick is the Sixers pick, and that was the interesting one as people were getting through. So if Kevin Knox, as Woj says, going to the Knicks, now for the Sixers at 10, there's been a lot of talk of Mikal Bridges out of Villanova, local kid, obviously played at Villanova, but also played his high school ball at Great Valley High School in Malvern, Pennsylvania. So Mikal Bridges, 3-and-D guy, he can really shoot it. You talk about Knox. Bridges doesn't necessarily have that same smooth in-between part. He's a really good athlete, a very good athlete, but he's almost a three-pointer or he's going right to the cup on you, and he definitely can defend. He's got really good length, so he would fit right in with the Sixers, I think, and I don't know what you're thinking about what they actually need, whether it's shooters, but for me, a guy who can shoot the basketball from the outside, he really improved on that, and then also has the athletic ability to play defense and attack the hole. I think he would be a nice fit there alongside Simmons and Embiid and Saric as you're trying to build towards the future.
Yeah, without question. I was really impressed watching him in the tournament and think that he is another one of those guys. Now, Mikal how tall is Bridges?
He's 6'7".
Yeah, so it's too bad. If he was like 6'9", with really like a little bit longer, I'd say that's the guy that you want to pick in the top 3 picks. Like he can knock down threes, he can do a nice pull-up game. He actually has a little bit of that Kevin Durant game, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, he kind of does. I mean, the thing about him is that he's really a good athlete, whereas Kevin Knox is a little bit taller and maybe a little longer. Mikal Bridges is shorter side, but he's a really good athlete. And, it's funny when you see guys with length who are that athletic, they can actually be projected out. When he was a freshman, people were talking about him, as being the best pro prospect on that Villanova team. And you start to think about some of the guys they've had with DiVincenzo, Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, obviously now playing for the Lakers. Mikal Bridges looked like the best NBA prospect, and he ended up staying a few years in school. He's a junior, but he's only 21 years old, and I still think he's got a really bright future. I just think he fits so well as a 3-and-D guy.
I agree. And you know what? Dave is back, and we're going to try and bring him back into the discussion here in a second as soon as I get him cleaned up here. Let me just do this. And
the Sixers are going with Bridges, too, while we get Dave situated. And, again, having the local roots is big. You get a guy that played high school ball and college ball in the same area, southeastern PA, that he's going to be playing in the pros. You don't see that happen too often. And I think it'll be pretty cool for the hometown fans there. I know Sixers fans will love it. But he just felt like for so long he was destined to be a Sixers draft pick.
For sure, absolutely. And so I'm excited to see what happens with him and whether they're going to pick him and how he develops there, because obviously the Sixers should be well on their way to transcendence as far as competing a lot more in the Eastern Conference after their little bit of disappointing finish in the playoffs. I've got Dave set up here. Let's do this, and let's find out. Dave, are you back?
Am I back?
Well, not really.
Terrible. All right. Well, yeah, I might just watch you guys do the show then.
All right. Yeah. Listen. If we ever needed an effect that sounded like you were broadcasting from Mars, we now have it, and we can use it. Yeah, we tried 2 mics, and I don't know what happened. The earbuds worked really well at the beginning. So you want to try throwing those on one more time?
Sure.
All right, we can all watch Dave put his earbuds on. Wow, we have another pick coming up, I think. Although they are now, ESPN has a picture of the Brian Colangelo sitting in the stands and that whole disgrace of things. Any thoughts, Adam, briefly on that?
On the Brian Colangelo situation? Yeah. Well, I think it's been one of the craziest soap operas we've seen in quite some time. I think the biggest thing is just where management goes from here and whether they can get an executive in, whether it's a David Griffin or who that could give them an opportunity. If it's not LeBron, then some other free agents here. I think that to me is the big question is what the Sixers are doing long term in terms of their front office. There's a pick that's being made right now. Brett Brown's their acting guy, making the calls, making the picks. And so, to not have that overall vision, that long-term vision, I just think every day that goes by puts you further and further behind the 8 ball because this is an executives league. People talk about it being a players league, which I agree. But when you look at the R.C. Buford, Sam Presti, Daryl Morey, Bob Myers, and, of course, Danny Ainge, when you look at those guys, it's the old chess versus checkers argument. Those guys are so far ahead of the rest of the executives in the league. And so to not even have any executive in place and any long-term vision, Lindsey at Utah is another one. I just think that the best executives are always having such a big advantage. So without having Colangelo there, I think it's really crushing to the team right now.
Right. But I guess obviously better to have him not there and not taint the free agent process than to have him than there. So
sure. Is Dave available? Do we have Dave back?
I think so.
It's slightly better, but maybe not. I don't know. Say something else for us.
Yeah. So I'm here. Yeah. Miguel is going to go to the Sixers at 10, and we want to talk about a wing league.
All right. Guess what, Dave?
It's not working.
It's not. It's different. It's bad in a different way now. So it sounds almost like internet-wise, even though your video looks great. So I guess we're gonna have to not call it a day. But anyway, thank you, Dave, for the old college try. We'll have to figure this out one of these days, sooner than later. Anyhow. We do have a Woj bomb. What he was trying to say was that you're right, Mikal Bridges will be going at number 10 to the Sixers. So that's a nice little fit, like you said.
And a wild thing to look at with Mikal Bridges, and I love this about it. First of all, great attitude, which you saw from a lot of the Villanova kids. You saw how well Josh Hart adjusted to the league. Like I said, we saw the potential. His first year, their freshman year at Villanova, he played in 40 games, didn't start any of them, and he shot 29.9% from three. His sophomore year, 39.3% from three, and this past year, 43.5% from three on 6 attempts a game. So just seeing a guy that's worked that hard to develop his game when he already was a really good athlete and a pro prospect. He was a first-rounder, definite given over the last 2 years, but he turned himself this year into a lottery pick, and I always got to give a lot of praise to kids like that. For sure. It's a great story. I love to see that. If you're going to come from anywhere in college and be ready to play in the NBA, in my opinion, I think Villanova is going to be one of those places that we'll see over the next several years that those are the guys who are getting prepared pretty well. Jay Wright's got a really good program of player development. So I think he gets it. The way they play is a lot like how the NBA is playing. So those are the guys. That's why I feel like Rick Brunson should be another guy that should be drafted a lot higher than he's going to be. Jalen Brunson.
Jalen Brunson.
Brunson's son, yes.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Yes, forgive me.
There's 4 Villanova kids that are going to be taken in this draft. You got Mikal Bridges, then Dante DiVincenzo, Jalen Brunson, and Amari Spellman, who came out after just his freshman year. They're big, who stepped outside and can shoot the basketball. So, yes, they move the ball really well. And to see a team with that many pro players who played as unselfishly as they did, that's the NBA way. The most successful teams know how to move the basketball, know how to play well together. So these guys not only competing against each other in practice every day, but play so well together. You know that they're going to be great team guys at the next level, especially how hard they've worked on their game. I think exactly what you bring up about Jay Wright is why everybody's dying to play for him right now.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a guy that gets it. Like there's a guy that understands how to merge player development, preparing them for the NBA, and I would think it's safe to say winning. He's certainly done quite a lot of that in the last several years. So good to see from him. Where are we now? We are actually at the 11th pick. Charlotte is on the clock. And we have to figure out what they want to do, and then we can discuss, how many more picks we want to try and break down through the first round or so.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm good to go as long as you feel like going. I'm prepared. The Charlotte pick is interesting. I mean, Kemba Walker and what his future looks like. As part of the Charlotte Hornets, we know that what he's meant to that organization. I think it's really interesting to see what Charlotte's going to do because, there was talk about Collin Sexton maybe being that pick, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the 6'4.5" without shoes, 6'6" with shoes, point guard from Kentucky. A lot of talk, a lot of love around SGA, as they call him. Only 19 years old, has really shown enormous potential as he started to come on at the second half of the season for Kentucky. So this pick now for the Hornets is a really interesting one to see in what direction they go because this tests the Dave DuFour theory. Do you go with the best player available? I'm in agreement with Dave that you always do. And if that's the case, is it a point guard? Because, you also have Malik Monk there. So something else to consider with the Charlotte Hornets. Who would you like to see a team like the Hornets? What kind of player would you like to see them take?
Good question. Yeah, I think, again, with the Walker issue up in the air, it feels like they should want to get a big. They want to get a long, athletic big who's still left. And I got to look now. I have to look at my notes to see who's left. Is that Michael Porter Jr.? Now I'm getting in the position here, 11, 12, 13, where I feel like that's a good place to try and get him and hope he does develop over a number of years or whatever, comes back and plays like they think he can.
Yeah, this is around the time when I expect him to go as well. And look, after 11, which the Hornets, we'll see what they end up doing. Woj is now reporting, actually, Woj that they're discussing a trade possibility with Phoenix because Phoenix wanted to get back into the lottery and could be going after Gilgeous-Alexander. And so that would be interesting. There's been a lot of talk recently about how the Suns are very interested in Aaron Holiday from UCLA. I don't think they would take Aaron Holiday at 11. But if that's who you love and you feel like he could be your point guard of the future, then I'd say, go for it. He had a tremendous year this year and obviously has NBA pedigree with two brothers who are in the league and have been successful in the league. But the other interesting thing to point out is if the Hornets do not take Michael Porter Jr., which I don't expect them to, the Clippers have 2 picks back-to-back, 12 and 13. I know Jerry West loves Jerome Robinson. That's something that I know for sure.
Okay.
That could be one of them. And then the other one could be that Michael Porter Jr. This is the perfect situation. If you have back-to-back picks in the lottery, why not take a flyer on one of them? This might be the right situation and get a guy that has that crazy star potential.
Yeah, for sure. Now, we could talk about Holiday for a second, if you like, because I've watched him for 2 years now at UCLA, and I don't know. A lot of the UCLA people were really high on him and felt like, he should be a mid-first-round pick, and I just sort of, I don't know, a guy, because he really isn't that tall, but he's not like a water bug. So what does he do? What's his, how does he, he's also, I would say he's a bit more of a shooting guard than he is, or a combo shooting guard than he is a point guard, wouldn't you say?
Well, here's the thing that was interesting with him. After his freshman year, he's a junior now. He came out after his junior season, but after his freshman year, there was word that Lonzo Ball was going to be joining UCLA. And as the story goes, he was, considering maybe I should transfer, maybe I should declare, what should I do? What does my future hold? And his brothers convinced him to stick around, and they said, when you enter the NBA, you'll be a rotational guy, a sixth man. You're going to have to come off the bench, be a backup lead guard. This is a great situation for you to learn from. And so they encouraged him to stick around, play with a point guard like Lonzo Ball, who's an NBA caliber lead guard. Alford obviously was in the backcourt at that point. And they said, look, be a rotational guard. That's what your NBA future holds, at least early on. So why not learn from that? So that was a huge experience. He stuck with it, had a very good year playing alongside Lonzo, and then last year really came into his own. He's a guy who averaged over 20 points a game, on nearly 6 assists a game, had a stretch where he was just dominant in the Pac-12. He is small. He's under 6 feet tall. That being said, he's very strong. He's quicker than you think. He can shoot the ball really well. There's really not much that he doesn't do well. He finds people. He's a great leader, and defensively he gets after it. One of the best things he does is just gets into guys' bodies, gets really low, and really disrupts ball handlers and gives every opposing guard trouble. So he was one of the best lead guards in the entire country this year. You put him up there with the Trey Youngs and everything. And so, I don't know where he'll slip to. I don't even want to call it slip because I don't know that he was projected to go much higher than the late teens. But Aaron Holiday could be a guy with the kind of future that you're looking for.
For sure. Okay. And that's true. I mean, we have these 3-and-D guys we talk about who are typically 6'6" to 6'9" that could cover wing players, but there also is the bulldog point guard defender that can shoot threes. So that's also one of those really valuable commodities as well that we don't often have a lot of. A guy like Patrick Beverley comes to mind who, didn't have a three-point shot in the beginning and really had to work to get it as much as he has it now, which isn't amazing, but it's there. So yes, in theory, if Holiday is already well on his way to being a really good three-point shooter, and if he's got the defensive pedigree, yes, that would be a nice addition. Again, I would suspect, that's going to be in the 15 or beyond, 15 to 20 something, right?
Yes, and we just got the
Okay.
Hornets pick is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and again, Kentucky, another one of these one-and-dones from Kentucky, very talented kid in terms of. I don't know how much tape you watched on him, but, he's got great height. Like I said, 6'4.5", got good size. He's long, though, not just the 6'4.5". And what was really interesting was he didn't really start much early on in the season. And then about 16 games into the season, he really came on and got the starting job. And I talked to a few NBA people, and they'd watch Kentucky play, and the first thing they'd say, there's a kid named Quade Green who was playing ahead of him, and they said, man, there's an outstanding lead guard on Kentucky. And you're thinking, oh, it's Quade Green. But really, it was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He can defend. He's got that great length. And finds different ways to score. He's kind of a crafty scorer underneath. Still learning the position, still new to the game, but, he can explode for scoring bunches and really was consistent once he was given the reins. I don't know that he's going to be given that role, obviously, with Kemba Walker there, but maybe this gives you the opportunity to either groom him down the road or, you trade Kemba Walker right now because his value is so high.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it almost feels like the new coach and James Borrego, maybe they, to me, it's like at some point after X amount of years, it just, if it's not working, and I think it's fair to say that it's just not really working in Charlotte, that it's time to move on. And they made the coaching move, and I certainly feel like it's the same for players. And it just simply means maybe you're not accepting, you're failed or whatever. It's just simply, you have to move on. And now, did you see Shai work out at all?
I did not watch him work out.
Because ESPN listed him at 6'6", not 6'4". What do you think? Which one's more accurate?
He was 6'4". It's funny because they go back and forth. At the combine, he was measured without shoes as 6'4.5", and that's mostly what I'll go with guys because that's how I consider. I've always been measured. I don't know any. Look, as someone who comes from a family that has some doctor ties, I know that.
Right.
I know that you don't get a chance to say, hey, let me put on my tallest shoes to go get measured. But, yeah, he's 6'4.5" without shoes. But when you start to look at measurements that come out of the combine without shoes, everybody is a little bit under what they're always listed as. But the guys we've been saying so far, we've been listing their height without shoes. And, so with shoes, yes, 6'6", and certainly has that length. So,
well, your family has horse ties. They measure the horse without the horseshoes on, right?
Exactly.
So, we do that in the socks as well. So, but he looks really kind of still a bit raw, but long and really athletic. I mean, it just seems like every year goes by, we have more and more of these kids who are just sort of 6'5", 6'6", 6'8", athletic. They all, certainly the bigger they are, the more skills they have, the more guard skills they have. So that's what's going to happen. I think the complexion of the NBA is going to slowly change over the next 5-6 years as more and more of these 6'10", 6'11", 7-footers come out that can shoot and that can handle the ball. It's it's going to change the league in a very profound way, as I think we had heard about for a long time, and just only now I'm kind of starting to handle to see that for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Now we have another Woj bomb here. The Clippers traded for Gilgeous-Alexander. Sending their 12th pick. Remember, the Clippers have 12 and 13.
Right.
Send the 12th pick and 2 second-round picks. So basically, 2 second-round picks to move up one slot to get Gilgeous-Alexander. And what makes that an interesting deal, and the Clippers are going to select for the Hornets Miles Bridges out of Michigan State, who we can talk about in one sec. But I think what's really interesting about that is now I also think that the Clippers are not going to take Jerome Robinson out of Boston College. They wanted sort of a taller, bigger lead guard, and now that's where the Clippers are going, which also brings up questions about Teodosic.
Well, he's gone. We know Teodosic. Yeah, right, exactly. He's gone. Well, here's go ahead.
The backcourt was pretty loaded already, so it looked like they were going to still have some depth in the backcourt. It's interesting. They must really like Gilgeous-Alexander, in order to, the second-round picks can oftentimes just be to shed. It can be just a dump for you because they're not guaranteed contracts anyhow. But just anyway, the fact of the matter is to take one of those picks and turn it into Shai Gilgeous-Alexander tells you what they think of him.
Sure, and it's too bad because Tyrone Wallace with the Clippers was actually really good for them, and they kind of, yanked him around in the G League and back and forth and didn't really give him a chance to shine like he could have, even though even in the little chance he got, he did very well. And he was that 6'5", 6'6" guard that could do a lot of things for them, and so I hope that he gets a shot somewhere.
And similar, and you're absolutely right. Similar player. It's almost like you take an upgrade version of what Tyrone Wallace is and say, oh, we really like what this guy brought to the table. Let's go the next level of it, the next iteration of it, and it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. How much Miles Bridges did you get a chance to watch?
I haven't seen much of him at all because, but I do have in my mind's eye, I'm picturing like this connection to like Draymond Green for some reason. Am I close to that?
Well, he's a physical player. I mean, same build in a way. He's measured at the combine without shoes, 6'5" and a quarter, 6'6" and 3/4 inches with shoes. Really has been an impactful player. Everyone expected him to be in the lottery last year. He was a big-time recruit for Tom Izzo and Michigan State. He's a guy that's very explosive, very strong physical build, can shoot the three, also attack the rim. We didn't see a lot of, necessarily the mid-range game that I think people might have been expecting, but he certainly developed his game in his second year. And you don't see guys who return after the opportunity to be lottery picks in year one. And that's something that, Bridges has done, but, shoots free throw percentage at a really high clip. He's over 85%. He was certainly the man on their team. And I think that there's a lot that he can bring to the table. I mean, there's plays that you're going to watch from Miles Bridges that are just going to wow you. And I think he's one of these guys that we could be saying a couple of years from now, how the heck did Miles Bridges slip in the draft? And now you start to think, if Charlotte and the new head coach are going in this direction, now you're talking about if they keep Kemba Walker, Malik Monk, Miles Bridges, you're talking about an explosive, athletic, fun group that could really bring a lot of energy to that arena and to that franchise.
Well, here's a question, because Michigan State had these two guys, right, that are getting picked pretty high in the draft. How they can't make it out of the second round?
Well, and even more so when you watch that game, and you talked about it earlier, playing against the 2-3 zone. I mean, Syracuse had a mediocre year, sneaks into the NCAA tournament, and now they face the second round. Michigan State's loaded, and it wasn't just them. There's other players on that team that were very good. Cassius Winston, they had some shooters. Ben Carter played okay for them at times. Langford, they had a ton of talent on this Michigan State roster. Maybe one of the most talented teams Tom Izzo, not even a maybe, one of the most talented teams he's ever had. All that being said, they faced a 2-3 zone, and you talked about it. I mean, coaching-wise, Bridges should have been the guy flashing to the free throw line or somewhere on the high post against that 2-3. He's the perfect guy because he can turn around, square up, hit, or attack you, find other people. And they didn't utilize him, and I couldn't understand it for the life of me. He's a guy who makes plays and is very solid. I think, in fact, if you're looking at productivity and where a guy could be, sometimes we knock a guy for staying in school an extra year. Why didn't he come out after his freshman year? Why wasn't he one and done? He could have been a lottery pick last year. He worked on his game. He got stronger, got more physical, and I think his numbers could have been even better if he wasn't playing on such a loaded team. So this, I think, is absolutely wonderful for the Charlotte Hornets.
For sure. And then the other question then is like at least thing with like Duke, who had another two guys in this high in the draft. At least they made it pretty far in the tournament and had a good, successful season. But you wonder, like, at some point when you have this many good players, like, that should be a title. It should be a Final Four. That should be right all the way through. So I suppose we still have enough wild happenings in the one and done of the NCAA tournament. You never know what's going to happen, which is why I suppose it makes it so fun. So we now have we have the trade that went through. So basically the Clippers are going to get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and the Hornets were going to get Miles Bridges, we just talked about, in 2 future second-round picks. So interesting. So Clippers, I don't know. I mean, I suppose the Hornets drop down one, but then get a couple of second-rounders. So it seems like it's kind of a wash as far. The second-rounders usually don't give you that much. So basically a flip of picks, is what you say. So
it seems like the Clippers, that may have just been a phone call and saying, hey, it's, we really like him, whatever. We wanted to guarantee. It looks to me, though, they definitely want their guy. I mean, and they moved up one spot to get him. Again, very minimal risk. You're giving up your second round picks. There's not much value in non-guaranteed contracts. And oftentimes you don't even want those picks. So it might have just been an insurance policy to guarantee. They've maybe started to hear that, the Hornets were interested in him. But again, if the Hornets really wanted him, 2 second-round picks wasn't enough for them to move the needle and turn around and not take him.
Sure.
Now, Woj is now reporting that the Nuggets, first the Clippers are going to pick at 13, but then the Nuggets have the 14th pick, and Denver, according to Woj, is considering now Michael Porter Jr., which I mean, if you can get a player who has the potential of Porter at the 14th pick in the draft, I think you have to take him. And I understand there's risk there, but at the same time, at 14, that gives you such a great opportunity. If he doesn't pan out, you can live with that, unlike being the Kings at number 2.
Right. I agree. I never felt good after that report with him getting picked anywhere higher than, maybe middle of the first round, tops. The Clippers, Shams is reporting the Clippers are going to select Jerome Robinson with the number 13 pick in the draft. So what's your scouting report on Boston Collins, Jerome Robinson?
Well, it's funny because I just said it looked like to me when they got Gilgeous-Alexander, I said there's no way they're going to get Jerome Robinson, who I've been hearing all along how much Jerry West loved Jerome Robinson. They love the kid. Huh. Here's the deal with him. He's about 6'5". He's got really good size. Officially, I'll let you know, what he tested at. But basically, Jerome Robinson is 6'4", 6'5" with shoes is what he ended up testing out. But he was a big-time scoring guard at BC. I mean, he was one of the best scorers in the ACC, can really fill it up. He could shoot it. He's very athletic. He can take it to the hole. He's got a lot of talent. The thing about Jerome Robinson was he was playing off the ball, and he really has basically been proclaiming that he could be a point guard at the next level, a guy that not only can score but has that size. We didn't really get a chance to see it at all at BC. A good distributor, but didn't show like this otherworldly vision. But then again, when you're not the guy with the ball in your hands at all times, that sometimes can be a different story. So Jerome Robinson, a guy who can catch and shoot, score it. He's going to be an excellent scorer. He can play off the ball, can play the point, and I think you start to look at 2 guys for the Clippers now in which they add to the backcourt. And again, what are we talking about? Length, size in the backcourt, and now some shooting ability as well as some athletic ability. It's going to make.
Uh-oh. And we lost Adam. They're dropping like flies. Are you back? Okay, cool. Well, yeah. So we pretty much got the Jerome Robinson scouting report. And yes, and I really like what I've seen too. Is a real. I mean, what you look at when you see the highlights is basically real sort of traditional shooting guard, right? Like that Klay Thompson mold. I would be really excited if it did indeed turn out that he could be a combo guard and play both positions, like a CJ McCollum almost. Would you say?
Yeah, I think that's sort of what the future holds for this kid, is what they're hoping for, and that's been a comp that a lot of people are using, the C.J. McCollum comp, because he's a guy who scores so well, and then if he can slide over and play some point, and combo guards, the way of the future. The interesting thing, and I'm always curious from the NBA perspective, especially from someone like yourself, is how much do you believe you need a lead guard? You talked about it earlier, guys looking over at the head coach and calling plays. And obviously certain coaches are going to call more plays than others, but how much do you need just one guy that commands your team, that's calling out plays, that understands everyone's role in the offense? How important is it to have just that singular guy?
Well, I was referring to the coach doing a Carlisle.
I know you were.
So, but you mean like on the floor, have that general? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm saying we know that certain coaches are going to rein guys in more, like Carlisle, and call the plays out, and other guys will let them play. But I'm saying in general, you still need someone out there that's calling plays when they need to be called, getting guys together when the team starts to collapse a little bit. Right. How important do you think it is just to have one guy that has that role?
I think that there is importance to have that, because invariably it will break down. You need to get organization going, and you need to have a guy who can kind of dribble the ball under pressure and still be able to manage that. And I always thought it's nice to have that guy who's like, you know what, this guy hasn't gotten a shot in a while. We got to get him a shot because we know he's going to play harder on defense when he touches the ball. That kind of a thing. That said, as we move more to a read and react offensive scheme for a lot of teams where there's sort of flowing and motion, 50, 60, 70% of the time, then it is a little bit less important to have a guy that's going to be like sitting there holding up a fist or holding up 2 fingers and calling a specific play, right? There's going to be an initial alignment that will then key certain actions depending on where the ball goes, what the defense does. So all of a sudden, like that's why the triangle was like that. You never really needed to have a guy that's sitting there every time down, pounding the ball and holding up a bunch of fingers. And I think if the triangle has died, that part of the way offense is run is certainly not. So that is still alive and well and burgeoning and flourishing. So that might be a little bit less of a concern, whereas now every stoppage of play, every out of timeout is when the coach has that control to call those plays. And so, yeah, that Chris Paul guy is probably going away even more than that is apparent now.
Now, let me ask you this, though. What about from a psychological standpoint? Because I'm always curious about that. The team all of a sudden is giving up a run. Guys are struggling. That leadership, you just feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be from the guy bringing the ball up the court?
Right. Well, I mean, we see Kevin Durant's the guy that does that for the Warriors, right? He just is like, F this, I'm going to score and take over because we need it. That Michael Jordan mentality, the Kobe Bryant mentality, that is what you probably still need. And I think that obviously the Warriors are really excited to have that because they didn't necessarily have that without Durant, right? Like Clay and Curry, those guys, Curry has it a little bit, but he's invariably going to create a shot for himself that might be pretty damn hard, whereas at least Kevin Durant's going to do a spin move and elevate from 15, 16,
right.
Or post up and score, and that's what they didn't have. So, yeah, you're going to need that, because if you want to win a title in the NBA, it's going to have to go through LeBron, you're going to have to go through KD, and and AD and all those kind of players. You're going to need that no matter what. So that is important. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to have a lead guard controlling that. That is, he the guy that Kevin Durant brings it up and he will shoot it. Because I'm trying to think of how often when he hit a big bucket for them, I kind of feel like a lot of the time he brought the ball up too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely think, or at least ran some type of ISO play where he caught it and then set it up himself. And so now you're talking about at least he's still the one initiating, somewhat of the offense.
Yeah,
right?
and it's less of like, Curry just sort of pointing him out and just throwing it to him and everyone clearing out, whereas back in the day, Magic would have been like, he would have been like waving everybody over and tossing it into Kareem and then, giving him all the space in the world. Like I feel like, and that was probably all Magic deciding to do that because he knew what they needed. It's not the same game anymore. It doesn't happen.
If you tell me the point guard position is going away for good, I'm really going to start to cry now. You will break my heart because I have such love. But before you even jump in on that, so Michael Porter is the pick right now for the Denver Nuggets, and so let's talk about Porter for a moment. I mean, you're talking about a guy who has length. One of the things that's interesting is he's been compared to Carmelo Anthony, but here's the thing, and I'll give you a good example of what we were discussing before in terms of actual height. Carmelo Anthony measured out at 3 inches shorter than Porter did at the combine. Porter 6'9.5" without shoes, so certainly has that length. We know about his three-point shooting. We know about the athleticism. He is almost like your prototypical. You want to start to talk about Kevin Durant. We don't think when you watch Michael Porter Jr. play, you don't think of him as a guy that's Kevin Durant-like just because you don't even think that he's that tall. It's hard to almost imagine. But 6'9.5" without shoes, this guy has that crazy length that could be really special at the next level. And he was unbelievable as an athlete and as a shooter at the high school level. The only game in college that he really played a full game in before the injury was Missouri scrimmaged Kansas.
Right.
He scored 20 points in that game, shot 6 of 20. But showed some explosiveness, showed his ability to shoot the three. We have not had a chance to see Michael Porter at the college level, which, we was sort of the case before the one and dones anyway. It's sort of the same type of thing, except for the fact that Porter, we don't know if he'll ever be healthy. And I know you've said to me that it certainly scares you, though, what his future looks like from a health perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the back surgery stuff. I mean, ask Steve Kerr what he thinks about back surgery, and he's not even playing anymore. That's a real scary thing, especially for a guy that plays above the rim like he does. And listen, what we have seen, the little footage we have seen, is impressive. He's got skill, he has the body, he's got the pedigree. So, but again, that's why it simply wasn't worth screwing around. Now, granted, 5 years from now, we could be like, oh, what an amazing job they did to pick him, and they got a great value and all that stuff at that position. But again, when we go back and realize the situation, without question, this is where he should have been going, in the middle of the first round. And the Nuggets now have a guy. Now, here's the question. Do we have any feeling that he's going to come in ready to play in October?
Well, I think he'll play. I mean, he really is at least pushing that narrative. I mean, he did come back. We did see him come back at the end of the year. He played a couple games. And, there's sort of different ways to look at that. And again, he's only 19 years old, and he just turned 19. His birthday, or actually, no, sorry. He's actually going to turn 20 in a week.
Okay.
So something else to consider. But the thing about it is, he came back, and there's two ways to look at it. You can say, if he sits this thing out, and does what's best for him physically, what do you look better as a prospect? Whether you just sit out for the remainder of the year, or do you try to rush back and play with your teammates and, make a go of it? What's going to look better in the eyes of scouts? Which is better long-term for your health? And I think he felt like he was well enough to played in a couple games. And really, the sad part was when you watched Michael Porter make his return late in the season, it was so sad. There's no other word for it, because here's a guy that didn't move like he used to move. It's watching a guy that later on in his career, when you watch a player get older and they can't move the same way and they've got injuries and they're stiff and they're nervous to use certain moves. And that's how he was. He wasn't dunking balls that he was earlier. And he just played with such intensity and sort of this carelessness, carefree nature when he was in high school. And we just did not see that when he made his return. And like we talked about earlier, doctors say it might still be 2 years before we see him really at 100%. Is a team going to be that patient in this day and age and really wait out to see him 2 or 3 years down the line? That's what I worry about in terms of the future.
Well, for what it's worth, they did a big analysis of players who had the surgery versus who didn't have the surgery and opted for rehab instead. And after, I think, 3 years, they were virtually the same. But the surgery did give an advantage in the first year. There was a better play and better production out of those players in the near term. But again, there's the risk of things going wrong in the surgery. As far as we know, the surgery went fine and everything is okay. I know he had back spasms, but that's just probably par for the course in his rehab. But that's the only thing I'd be a little bit nervous about as well, too, is that if you had that patience, then you probably would catch up after enough time just doing rehab. But their argument could very well be then, okay, maybe he will get back a little bit quicker than normal. And who knows? Maybe the altitude will be lighter on his back, and I guess there's slightly less gravity there. I don't know. But anyway, a good pick. Denver's in that really weird situation anyway, where they're good, but not quite good enough, right? And they have a lot of really good pieces, but can't quite figure out their identity. So, it's interesting to see, if he had gone to a more established team, does that change his fortunes as well, where he could play minutes that might be easier because his team's up a lot more often? They're not as intense, games throughout the whole season. Interesting question. Is he going to improve the bottom line for the Nuggets this year? Probably not, right?
Yeah, and I think you start to look. No, I don't think he's going to improve the bottom line for the Nuggets this year. And I just worry about him personally in terms of if we say, yes, I can't believe that teams passed on this kid in 5 years. I think my thing might be, we might be talking about him not playing for the Nuggets at that point, but for another team because they've moved on. So
right.
They're not getting that immediate production, and think about, you mentioned Jahlil Okafor earlier, in the show, and Jahlil Okafor, we forget, it's only been a few years, but we sort of look at it like, well, we sort of know who he is at this point. We forget how young these guys are. We're so easy to give up on them early because they start to sort of show necessarily who they are, who we think they are in terms of perception. Nerlens Noel, I think, falls in sort of the same camp. You sort of say, okay, I know who Nerlens Noel is at this point in his career. So in 2 years, are we going to say that about Michael Porter, even if he hasn't reached 100% yet? That's the question for me. The Wizards right now at 15, I'm going with Troy Brown of Oregon. And the scouting report on Troy Brown is McDonald's All-American, was highly thought of as he entered college, wasn't really productive this year. He's one of these guys who's long, 6'5" 3/4 without shoes, another inch taller with shoes, averaged 11 points a game, and didn't really shoot the three ball well. There was nothing in his game this year that you looked at. He wasn't as explosive as people thought. There was nothing really that you looked at and said, okay, that's a transferable skill. But what they like about Troy Brown was an exceptional high school player, showed immense talent coming out last year, and scouts are quicker to go for what a guy has done over the course of his high school career than in the 1 year of productivity in college, which is interesting. But the other part of it is, and I think this is huge, he's 18 years old. And that's, again, what you're talking about with kids like this. It's where does he project in 3 years? where is Troy Brown going to be? Is he going to be at the level of a guy that's, a 21-year-old, what we're seeing throughout the league?
Right, and it's a little frightening because, to try and factor anything that happens in high school to what might happen in the NBA is a little bit concerning. Certainly his stats don't jump off the page, 11.3 points per game, 6.2 rebounds, 3.2 assists, and he shot, under 30% from three on only 3 attempts. So, again, obviously they're hopefully they can fill a void there and somehow, train him to get better. Perhaps this means they're going to keep, I guess, Wall and Beal together. Maybe if they got a really great guard coming in that they could somehow say, well, maybe let's retool. And like I mentioned earlier, I think it's too late. I think the Wizards have missed their shot with this team, and I think it's time to break it up. And I said it last year before the season started, and I think they didn't prove me wrong. It's over. It's not working with what they have. So this would have been almost a nice time to see maybe we can develop the next guy. Troy Brown, though, doesn't strike me as the player that could be like, oh, we're going to bring him in, we're going to get rid of Beal and let him take the reins and develop. Does he, to you?
No. He's certainly not that guy. I mean, he's total project at this point. There's not any productivity you're getting. You talk about Michael Porter Jr., you think might be a superstar, but you're going to have to wait 2 or 3 years. Even in that case, I don't know what your ultimate ceiling is with Troy Brown, but it's that same thought process that you're waiting the couple of years before you really like
Luka Doncic, for instance, would have been that guy. Like if the Washington Wizards could have gotten him, right, then they would have we can move on from either Wall or Beal and start over. In fact, that wouldn't have been. It's too bad they couldn't move up, because if they could have done that, they could have traded the Wall. I would have liked to have seen a big backcourt, Doncic and Beal in the backcourt together, and get something good for Wall and retool. But we'll have to wait and see. Well, I mean, listen, Adam, we've been at this for an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. There's some guys still on the board that I think are interesting and worth just mentioning, not going into depth on.
Sure.
Kevin Huerter is one of them. For people that love Klay Thompson, I think he's a poor man's Klay Thompson. He's similar height, 6'7". The kid's really got, I think, an extremely bright future. He's young. He was a Maryland sophomore this year, but still only 19 years old. So, where's he going to be in a couple of years? Can pass the basketball, has good length, can defend. I think perfect 3-and-D guy, best shooter in the draft in my opinion. And for 2 other guys that are comp guys, Chandler Hutchison of Boise State is a 6'7" wing player who can shoot it, put it on the deck. He reminds me a lot of Doug Christie, actually. Moves sort of the same way as Doug Christie. And then another international player, we're not going to get many of them in this draft, certainly not in the first round. Maybe this might be the only other one, is Elie Okobo, who's a lefty lead guard who shoots the ball really well, is kind of dynamic with the basketball, reminds me of Nick Van Exel. So there's some of the comps that you could see as we work down the line. I think Grayson Allen will be a first-round pick, and we mentioned earlier Dante DiVincenzo, some of those other shooters that are good that I think are going to have a home in the league.
Sure, and I keep your eye on DiVincenzo. If he gets into a good situation, I think he could be a really good guard and surprise a lot of people, because he's got that, I guess we can't even say sneaky good athleticism. He's just got good athleticism, right?
Yeah, no, he definitely has good athleticism. My brother compares him to Bradley Beal, which I think, oftentimes guys aren't willing to do the white-black comparison, but I think that, he can really shoot the ball. He's got a great-looking form. I mean, maybe the prettiest jumper of anyone in the draft.
Yeah.
And he's really athletic. The thing is, we only saw it really in the national championship game. What do you make of that? He's a redshirt sophomore at Nova. But again, you talk about guys with that system in place, and I don't mean that as a negative, but more so a system that churns out really good basketball players who play unselfishly, play the right way, as Larry Brown says.
Sure.
But I really like Dante DiVincenzo.
Yeah, and it's powerful. He's got powerful, good bounce. So always good to see. Well, listen, great breakdown so far. We'll have to wait and see what happens and how that plays out. And maybe we'll do another podcast in the next couple of days once it all shakes out and we can do our sleepers. But Adam, thanks for coming on. Thank you, Dave, wherever you are out there. Sorry for this crashing and burning, but we will. I'll talk to Wirecast and get it fixed, I hope. And thank you guys for joining us as well for the nice live show and good questions and good response. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back. We'll be here all summer doing videos. Adam will be back on the podcast. We'll talk more about these picks. And thank you so much for coming out, everybody. And don't forget, at BBall Breakdown, we're not a channel. We're a conversation. You win? You win, Adam?
Always.